After my divorce, my mom told me I deserved it. You're too soft, just like your father. She didn't know I had the final say over the family trust. So I sat at that table, smiled, and started reading names. Hers wasn't one of them. My name's Ben. I'm 35, and the day my wife left me, my mom brought me a casserole and a lecture. Not even kidding. It was still warm when she walked through my front door. She didn't even knock. Just barged in like she always did, placed it on the kitchen counter, then looked me over like I was some broken appliance she had no interest in fixing. You look like hell, she said, wrinkling her nose. I'd barely slept. There were boxes by the front door, half hers, half mine. My wife, Emily, had just moved out 3 days ago. After 6 years of marriage and almost a decade together, she'd packed everything in 2 hours flat. She didn't say much, just that she needed something more. Turns out, something more was a guy from her work. Finance bro drives a Tesla and says things like, crush this quarter. I know because I saw the texts. And maybe, stupidly, I still thought mom would. I don't know. Say something kind. Ask if I was okay. Tell me I didn't deserve it. Instead, she walked past me, opened the fridge, sniffed, and said, figures. You always were soft. Just like your father. That hit harder than anything Emily ever said. I leaned against the kitchen counter and watched her help herself to my orange juice. She drank from the bottle like it was hers. She never liked my dad, even when he was alive. Thought he was spineless. Said he let people walk all over him. Never stood up to her. Never made enough money. Never wanted to be someone. Thing is, he was someone. Not in the way she wanted, but he was quiet, thoughtful. Worked behind the scenes. Built things. People liked him. Trusted him. I think he knew she hated that. She was the type who wanted to be the loudest person in the room, the one everyone had to orbit around. The fact that people came to him for advice drove her insane. And now she was saying I was like him. Which, honestly, was the biggest compliment I'd gotten in months. Ben, she said, like I was a student who just failed a pop quiz. You let her humiliate you. She walked out, and you didn't fight. You're 35. Grow a backbone. She snapped her fingers. If your father were still alive, I'd say the same to him. I didn't say a word. Just stared at her. She looked at the boxes. You better not grovel. That's what weak men do. She's not coming back anyway. Mom, I started. No, she interrupted. You need to hear this. You think the world's going to treat you fair just because you're nice? Because you're polite? You need to make people respect you. Otherwise, they'll step on you. She was giving this speech like she was some hardened war general and not the woman who threw a tantrum at Target last month because they were out of her brand of bottled water. Can you please just... I began again. What? She snapped. Tell you the truth? I'm the only one who will. I nodded slowly. She thought she was doing me a favor. But the funny thing is, she had no idea. No clue what I'd been quietly sitting on for the last 3 years. See, when my dad passed, he left behind more than just memories and a battered old fishing boat. He left behind a trust fund. One she thought she controlled. One that used to include her name. Until a few years before he died. Back then, there'd been a blow-up. She tried to get him to sell off some family property, old land from his side. He refused. She screamed, threatened, called him a coward in front of the whole extended family. He rewrote the trust a month later, removed her name, appointed me as executor. He didn't tell her. Neither did I. Why would I? She never asked. Everyone in the family still thinks she's the one holding the purse strings. That she's the matriarch now. She acts like it too, signing checks, promising funds, calling people my beneficiaries like she's some queen dishing out scraps. But the truth? She hasn't seen the real paperwork since Dad died. And I've kept it that way. I review the accounts. I sign the distributions. I determine who gets what. And her name? Nowhere. She doesn't know that. Not yet. So I stood there in the kitchen, listening to her lecture me like a failure. And I thought about the moment I'd finally open that file. The moment I'd sit across from her, with the whole family watching, and read the list of names. One by one. Until hers didn't come up. She poured more juice. You need to take control, Ben. People need to know who they're dealing with. I smiled then. Just a small one. Yeah, I said. They really do. My brother's name is Chris. If you ask my mother, he's the second coming of Elon Musk. If you ask me, he's a fast-talking middle manager with a gym membership and a habit of failing upwards. Growing up, he was always the favorite. The loud one. The risk-taker. The guy who got into fights at school and somehow still got praised for having spirit. He'd crash Dad's car. Boys will be boys. I'd forget to take the trash out once. Suddenly I was irresponsible, ungrateful, lazy. It was a pattern. Even now, nothing's changed. Chris has burned through 3 businesses in the last 8 years. All of them flashy. All of them empty. There was the marketing startup he co-founded that went under in 6 months. Then the crypto consulting firm. Most recently, It's some vague tech app thing that connects creators with investors. I've asked him 3 times what that means. He just says, "It's the future, bro." The best part? Every single venture was funded by the family trust. And who approved those distributions? Me. Yeah, I approved every single one. Because I wanted to see what he'd do with it. I wanted to watch. And because I knew what was coming. Dad always told me, let people show you who they are before you move the chess piece. So I sat back. I let Chris have his fun. Let Mom brag about him to every neighbor with ears. Let her tell people he was running the trust now, and I was just the quiet one. They were convinced I was some background player in my own life. What they didn't realize was, while Chris was hosting rooftop launch parties and burning through investor money, I was meeting with lawyers, with accountants, with advisors who actually respected Dad's legacy. I restructured parts of the trust last year, cleaned it up, simplified it. I made sure every distribution had a paper trail, proper documentation, and no room for appeal. And Mom still had no idea. To be fair, she was never good with details. She just assumed I was too soft to handle real control, that I'd cave under pressure, that I needed her help. She'd call me when she wanted something approved. "Ben, we need to release $40,000 for Chris's latest round. Investors are watching. Ben, your cousin Lindsay needs help with school. Make sure she gets something." Never a please, never a question, just commands. I always said I'd look into it. Sometimes I approved things. Sometimes I didn't. But I kept records. Emails. Call logs. Financial statements. Because the day was coming. The day I'd open the books in front of everyone and let them see. And now, after the divorce, after the way she mocked me in my own home, that day was getting closer. 2 weeks after the kitchen visit, she called again. Said she was throwing a small family dinner. Said it was to celebrate Chris's latest funding round. "You should come," she said. "It'd be good for you to be around people who are succeeding." Like I was some stray dog in need of inspiration. I said sure. I said I'd bring something. She told me not to worry. That Chris's partner was covering the wine and that she didn't want to overwhelm me with responsibilities. That part made me laugh. After I hung up, I walked into my office, opened the locked drawer, pulled out the black folder. Inside were the updated trust documents. The ones with my father's final signature. The ones Mom never knew about. Her name? Not a line. Not even a clause. Chris? Still there, for now. But there were conditions. He never read them. Never asked. I flipped through the pages, then sat down at my desk. Typed out a simple document. Trust Beneficiary Disbursement Report, Q4 Review. I wasn't going to yell. Wasn't going to throw wine glasses or make dramatic speeches. Nope. I was going to bring this folder to the dinner. Smile. Sit quietly. And when the moment came, I'd open it and just start reading. The dinner was held at my mother's house, of course. Big 2-story colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch. My father's dream home, though she'd remodeled nearly everything he'd loved about it after he passed. The pond he built out back? Filled in. His workshop? Turned into a yoga studio. His chair in the den? Tossed out the week after his funeral. I parked at the curb and sat in the car for a moment before heading in. The black folder was on the passenger seat. Clean, sharp, discreet. Inside, the trust's updated records, beneficiary listings, and a quiet storm waiting to land. It wasn't revenge I was after. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just wanted the truth to exist. Out loud. In front of everyone. I wanted to stop pretending. By the time I walked through the front door, the house was already full. Cousins. Aunts. Chris's fiancée. He got engaged last month to someone named Marissa who worked in digital lifestyle branding. Whatever that meant. I gave her a polite nod. My mother saw me last. She was wearing her usual wine-colored silk blouse and that pinched expression she called a smile. "You came," she said, like it was a surprise. "You invited me," I said, stepping inside. She gave me an air kiss near the cheek and immediately turned back toward the kitchen. "Chris is going to announce something big tonight. Make sure you don't interrupt him." The phrasing stuck with me. Make sure you don't interrupt him. Not, make sure to support your brother, or we're glad you're here. Just, don't ruin the show. Classic. I found a seat near the end of the long dining table. I didn't want to stand. Didn't want to mingle. Just sat and watched as Chris played host. He was doing his usual thing, clinking glasses, telling jokes, talking about angel investors like he invented the term. At one point he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "This next round's gonna be huge. I mean, we're talking legacy money." Someone clapped. A cousin I hadn't seen in years said, "Like your dad's trust?" Chris laughed, winked. Bigger. I just smiled. Dinner was loud. Fake. Everyone trying too hard. My mom floated around like a queen holding court, complimenting outfits she'd definitely insulted behind people's backs, laughing a little too loud. Then, somewhere between dessert and the second bottle of wine, it happened. My mother stood, glass in hand, She tapped it with a spoon like it was a wedding reception. I just want to say, she began, how proud I am of my son. She motioned to Chris. He's everything his father never was. Strong, fearless, a builder. He's taken this family's legacy and made it something real. Chris did that fake humble shrug people do when they know they're being praised. Then she turned to me. And Ben, she added, thank you for being here. I know it's been a rough few months. That silence, that smile. Your divorce, she said, louder now. It was hard on all of us. But sometimes, life has a way of teaching us who we really are. You just need to toughen up, sweetheart. Like your brother. People chuckled. Not because it was funny. Because they didn't know what else to do. I looked down at the table. Then at the folder beside my chair. And I reached for it. I have something, I said. Everyone turned. Chris froze mid-laugh. My mother raised an eyebrow. Something? I nodded, stood, and calmly placed the folder on the table. It's about the trust, I said. Since we're all here, and everyone seems invested in our family legacy, I thought it was time to be transparent. The room fell dead quiet. I opened the folder, pulled out the first sheet. I've got the latest distribution list for the next quarterly payout, including adjustments and final designations from Dad's original revisions. Someone at the far end cleared their throat. I started reading. Aunt Monica, $12,000. Uncle Ray, $8,000. Cousin Talia, $6,500. Chris, $15,000. Pending performance verification. I paused. My mother leaned forward. And I looked at her. And that's it, I said. She blinked. What do you mean? Your name isn't on the list, I said, matter of fact. Silence. She laughed once. Very funny. I pulled out the notarized copy of the revision documents. Slid them across the table. Dad's signature. Lawyer's seal. Effective date, 2 years before his passing. Her smile faded. What is this? The new trust structure, I said. He removed you after the property incident. I've been executor ever since. Chris looked like he'd been hit by a truck. You can't do that, she stammered. This has to be a mistake. I shook my head. It's not. She picked up the paper like it might burn her. Her hand shook. You knew? She whispered. For 3 years, I said. You never asked. You just assumed. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound my mother made when she finished reading that document. It wasn't a gasp. It wasn't even a shout. It was a long, low exhale, like someone trying to keep control while the floor gave out from under them. She looked at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Ben, she said slowly, this isn't real. I didn't respond. Because it was real. She turned to Chris, holding out the paper like it was suddenly his job to fix everything. Do something, she hissed. Chris didn't move. He was staring down at the numbers on the second page, the payout conditions. The note that said his next disbursement was subject to proof of revenue and submission of actual project earnings. Something I added last year after his third startup, tanked with nothing but a yacht party and a few broken NDAs. You made yourself the executor? He finally said, his voice tight. No, I said calmly. Dad did. You let us believe you weren't involved. Because you never asked. And you never listened. The room was dead silent. Aunt Monica shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Uncle Ray looked like he was trying to calculate whether this meant he'd still get his distribution. And my mom? She was shaking. You've been sitting on this? Lying to us. No, I said. I've been managing the trust. Just like Dad asked me to. Quietly. Respectfully. But I'm his wife, she snapped. And you tried to sell the land, I said. Remember? The property from his grandfather. You brought in a realtor behind his back. When he found out, he said if you touched it again, he'd cut you out. Her mouth opened. Closed. She hadn't expected me to bring that up. Most people had forgotten that fight. I hadn't. I'd heard it all. I was there in the hallway when he told her. You care more about control than family. You don't get to rewrite my legacy. She screamed that night. Slammed doors. Called him a coward. 2 months later, the new trust was filed. Chris stood up from the table. This is insane, he muttered. You're ruining everything. No, I said. I'm just finally telling the truth. He grabbed his jacket. You think this makes you better than us? You think this is justice? I didn't answer. He stormed out the front door. Didn't even look back at his fiancée. She stayed seated, blinking, unsure if she was supposed to follow. My mother stood next. Her eyes were glassy now, but not from sadness. From rage. You're making a mistake, she said. You think this gives you power? It doesn't. You're still that timid little boy who used to cry when people yelled. I stepped around the table, met her gaze. No, I said. I'm the man who sat at this table for years while you laughed at him. I'm the one Dad trusted to protect what mattered. And now, I'm doing exactly that. She raised a hand like she might throw her wine glass. Then thought better of it. She slammed it down on the table instead and left the room. I didn't chase her. Didn't apologize. Didn't try to explain. I turned back to the table and sat down. People didn't know what to say. A few aunts asked quiet questions. Someone offered to help clean up. One of the cousins gave me a thumbs up like this was a movie and I just pulled off the heist. But it wasn't a heist. It was truth, plain and quiet. And honestly, it was long overdue. Later that night, I sat in my car for a while before starting the engine. The folder was back on the passenger seat, now with coffee rings on one of the pages. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt relieved. Like I'd been holding my breath for 10 years and finally exhaled. Because for the first time in my adult life, I had said no to her. And that was worth more than any trust fund. By the next morning, my phone had 27 missed calls. 10 from Chris, 15 from my mother, 2 from a blocked number, probably her lawyer. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, ate my toast slowly, and read the emails starting to trickle in. My cousin Talia wrote, "Thank you. I always wondered why Mom stopped getting help with her bills after Uncle passed. I get it now." Uncle Ray's email was short. "Let me know what forms you need me to sign." Aunt Monica called me brave, which was funny, because when Dad made me executor, he said, "You'll be the bad guy. You okay with that?" Apparently, yes. I was okay with it. By noon, Mom had switched from angry calls to texting threats. She sent photos of old family documents, made vague comments like, "I've spoken to counsel," and insisted I was violating her spousal rights. But she forgot something crucial. The estate was split before the trust was set up. She got her half of the physical assets years ago. What remained, the financial trust, was solely from Dad's inherited side, managed entirely by him. And later, by me. She didn't have rights to it. Not anymore. Not since she tried to liquidate the ancestral property behind his back. Still, she pressed on. That night, she left me a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. "You always wanted to punish me," she said. "Well, now you have. Congratulations." She ended with, "Don't expect this family to forgive you." Funny thing is, I wasn't asking for forgiveness. What I didn't expect was what came next. Chris showed up at my apartment 2 nights later. No warning. Just banged on the door until I opened it. He looked terrible. Bags under his eyes. Collared shirt wrinkled. No Tesla keys in hand. "I need to talk," he said. I didn't say anything. Just let him in. He stood there in my kitchen, arms folded, like he wanted to fight but didn't know how. "I didn't know," he said. "About the clause." I nodded. "I figured. I just thought. Mom said Dad always wanted her to manage things." "He didn't," I said. Chris sat down. For once, he didn't swagger. Didn't joke. He looked at me like a brother, not a showman. Then he said something I hadn't expected. "Do you think he'd be proud of either of us?" I looked at him for a long time. Then I opened the drawer by the fridge. Pulled out a second folder. Inside, a second trust. Not financial. Personal. One Dad created a year before he passed. A letter trust. Each member of the family had one. Sealed. Handwritten. To be delivered when, and only when, I thought it was time. Chris's had never been opened. Until now. I handed it to him. He stared at it. "What's this?" "Dad's words," I said. "Unedited. Unfiltered. Meant for you." He took it, hesitated, then tucked it under his arm. He didn't open it in front of me. Just nodded and left. Did he cry when he read it? I don't know. But I do know this. He never called again to ask for money. And the next time I checked on his company, it had quietly shut down. No post. No farewell message. Just gone. As for Mom, she went quiet too. After a few weeks of silence, she sent one last message. "You and your father were always too close. Maybe that's why he never saw me clearly. I hope you enjoy what you've done." I didn't reply, because what I'd done was finally speak. And sometimes, silence is the loudest answer you can give. It's been 6 months since that dinner. Since I cracked open the truth like a bottle of wine and let everyone drink it raw. And in that time, the world didn't end. Chris disappeared from the family chat. His company page vanished a few weeks later. I heard from a mutual friend that he took a job in another city. Something stable, something without seed rounds and champagne launches. I don't know if he ever forgave me. I'm not sure I need him to. My mother, though? She did what she always does when she loses control. She rewrote the narrative. Started telling extended family that I tricked Dad in his final months. That I manipulated the will. That I'm greedy. But the funny thing is, people didn't buy it this time. Because I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself with long monologues or proof. I just kept doing the work. I've started restructuring the trust. I cut out the noise, the fake ventures, the relatives who only showed up when there was something to collect. I added in people who'd been overlooked for years. Like Lindsay, a cousin of ours who raised 2 kids alone after her husband left. She used to write me holiday cards, even when the rest of the family didn't. She now receives monthly support for tuition and childcare. My Aunt Sylvia, who once told me my dad was the only man who ever listened when she spoke. is getting help with medical expenses. There are no parties, no announcements, just quiet, steady change. I also moved, packed up the apartment, sold most of what I didn't need, and bought a small home 2 hours outside the city. It's modest, cozy, has a garden and a creaky porch that reminds me of Dad's old fishing cabin. I planted tomatoes last week. There's a wood shop in the back. I haven't touched a chisel since high school, but lately I've been thinking about building something. Not for profit, not to prove anything, just for the sake of building. Sometimes, I sit out there in the evening and go through Dad's old notebooks, the ones he left me when he died. Full of sketches, ideas, quotes he scribbled on napkins. There's one line I read over and over again. A storm clears the sky, not to destroy, but to make space for what comes next. One night, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Marissa, Chris's ex-fiancée. She'd left him a few weeks after the dinner. Said she couldn't be with someone who lied that easily, who didn't care where money came from as long as it showed up. At the bottom of her letter, she wrote, "That night, when you pulled out that folder, I saw something none of us did before. That you were the only one in the room who didn't need applause." I folded it carefully and tucked it away. I didn't respond, but I sat with that sentence for a long time. I haven't spoken to my mother since the dinner. No calls, no letters. Not because I hate her, but because there's nothing left to say. She raised me to think that silence was weakness, that softness was failure, that if I wasn't loud, I'd be forgotten. But what she never understood is that quiet doesn't mean powerless. It just means patient. And when you wait long enough, people reveal themselves. They always do. Final thought. I didn't expose my mother to shame her. I didn't cut Chris off to hurt him. I didn't hold on to that folder out of revenge. I did it because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is end a lie, especially the ones that live in families for generations. And now, I get to build something different, something better, something my father would have been proud of. Not loud, not perfect, but real. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.